You're listening to the Shoot Your Shot podcast. I'm Megan.
And I'm Jen, and we are two boss babes sharing our journey and inspiring you along the way.
Today, we are talking about turning your side hustle into a full-time small business. So if you have a hobby that you really love and you're making a little bit of money off of it, here are all of our tips and tricks and input on how to go full-time.
I'm actually so excited about this one. But first, I have to debrief on this weekend. So Megan and I are fully in our busy season right now, and we're just thriving and surviving. Yeah. I am anyway. I don't know about you, but I am. But this weekend I had an interesting scenario that I want to talk about. Megan and I haven't even talked about this. So I had 3 events this weekend. Friday was a smaller one. Saturday was the biggest wedding that we've done to date so far.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it was 5 hours. Usually my events are 4, but weddings are always a little bit longer. So very, very, very long story short, it was about an hour and a half away, which is the maximum that I do. So I was like all ready to go, got in the car, had forgotten something at home, so I had to like run back inside. So I was like on time. So I get a call from the event planner when I was 20 minutes away. And we had talked a lot prior to the wedding date. And she mentioned that the ceremony and cocktail reception were kind of near each other. So setup needed to be a little bit earlier because the ceremony was going to be going on.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason in my head, I just thought the trailer would be somewhere different than where the ceremony was, because that's always how it is. Like ceremonies usually like down the hill or like somewhere else.
Yeah, there's a tent.
Then there's cocktail hour. Yeah. And then the trailer's next to the tent. Well, the ceremony was literally next to where the trailer was being set up. So I got there 2 hours early, which is plenty of time for me to set everything up. Well, lo and behold, I had to hard stop at 5 o'clock. I got there at 4 o'clock. The cocktail hour started at 6. So I thought I had a whole nother hour to set everything up. I did not. So lo and behold, we were scrambling. But the reason I share this is because these are the challenges that come up that you have to pivot your business for. And we made it work. I was literally dripping sweat. Thank God I wore a dress that day, because I usually wear pants and my like logo t-shirt. But for whatever reason, it was like a really humid day. We ran out of ice in our first hour and a half.
Wow.
Thank God the venue, because a lot of our events are like in the woods.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Nothing around me, like no gas station, no nothing. I actually always ask the venue like where the closest gas station is when I arrive.
That's smart.
Just in case. But thankfully the venue had ice. We ended up having to get 3 more sleeves from them of ice, because it was like the first really hot, humid day.
Yeah.
And they had so much beer, so we had to put ice on the beer. And anyway, very, very long story short that I just had to talk about. But I had to pivot this weekend, and it really tested my patience and my entrepreneur skills. And driving home, I'm like, can I run this business?
Wow.
And it just like, it was that first like aha moment where it's like, I'm going to have these challenges.
Yeah.
And I was fine. Everything was fine. My client was happy at the end of the day. Like everything worked out. It was all good. But you stress yourself out so much.
Right.
And now I have another wedding this weekend that I'm going to stress myself out about again. But I truly feel that if you're not stressed out, and stressed to a level, like you shouldn't be not eating, not sleeping, things like that.
Right.
But if you're not stressed, you don't care about your business that much.
This is a really great story to kick off this episode. You slayed, because the bullet points that we're going to be talking about today, first one is how to go full-time, how to take your hobby into a full-time business. And the next one is all the skills. So you have the perfect skill set to be in a scenario like that where you're like, oh my God, I've never experienced like a wedding set up like this before. I have no time. Like, you needed to have the patience, the confidence, the problem solving to get what you needed to get done, and what you needed to prioritize in order to get things done. Because maybe there were some things that you were like, oh, as soon as the ceremony's over, like that can wait, or you gotta, there's so many different skills that we think are important.
But I think that's like the one thing about an entrepreneur. You have to learn how to pivot, and you have to learn how to problem solve. And that's what we're talking about today is, what are the best ways to problem solve? There really are no ways. You just have to know how to do it. And at the end of the day, problem solve. Just don't let your client see what's going on behind the scenes, because it's going to be fine.
Yeah. And that's not to scare you to say that like, oh, if you're not a good problem solver, you can't be a business owner, because you can teach yourself to be a problem solver. You can teach yourself to be confident, to be all of the different things, because I was a very shy, introverted kid, teenager, whatever, But look at me now. Like I'm talking to whoever's listening. I don't know who's listening right now, but like talking to strangers on the internet is how I make money now. Is sharing my thoughts on my stories is how I book clients, and creating all these reels and showing my face every single day. Like that's what you have to do as a small business owner to survive, I believe, especially in like a service-based business like we are. So not to say that if you're not confident, you can't be a small business owner. You just need the experience and something to help you get out of your shell in order to, you know, learn all of these different skills that we're going to be talking about. So
love it. All right. So let's dive in. So basically we're going to talk about what skills and experience and education you need to be a successful entrepreneur and turn your side hustle into a full-time position. So how to go full-time. We can kind of like dive into the bullet points, but, you know, you want to have an idea first. You know, What is your idea? I did not know mine was going to be a mobile bar, but once I had the idea, I very quickly did my research, and I'm like, how can I make this achievable? And how can I make this something that is going to be, you know, successful? And when I first started, I know I've talked about this before, I thought I was going to do one event per month. And I was like, you know, I literally thought this was going to be a hobby. And I said, if I do one event per month, I'll make this much money. You know, I could use the trailer in my driveway and, you know, whatever else. But I quickly realized that this was way more than a side hustle and way more than a hobby. Actually, what would you describe the difference between a side hustle and a hobby and then going full time? Let's start there.
I feel like a definition of a hobby is just something that you enjoy to do, something that you don't make money off of. And then the side hustle would be just a step further, where you're making like one event a month.
Yep.
I think that would be like a side hustle.
Yep. So one of our first topics is saving enough money to be able to leave say you have a full-time job. Let's start there. So I'll talk about my experience. So I worked in hospitality. I was there for 13 years. COVID happened, so I was furloughed from my job, but I eventually thought in 2 weeks I was going to get my job back, but clearly that didn't happen. But I eventually thought I would get my job back in hospitality, which I did. But during that time is when I started my business. But I did get my job back. I went back and I had my salary again. So for me, and I was the breadwinner of the family. I was making the money. I was, you know, paying our mortgage, paying majority of our bills. So for me to be able to leave this position, and luckily my husband held the insurance on our family, which is a big thing. Yeah. When I was younger, I never cared about insurance. I never cared about 401k. My grandmother always told me about it, but I never really cared. But now I know why she told me all those things. But you have to be able to live your life comfortably, and just not where you're so stressed out that you're not going to be able to run your business successfully, because money is a huge stress factor in anyone's life, especially when you're a new business owner. You know, money is the root of all evil. I mean, if you don't have it, you're stressed and you're wondering how you're going to make the next move. So you want to make sure that you have a comfortable, I guess, savings account, I guess you could say, to be able to start that business. And then you want to dive into kind of building a portfolio for yourself?
Sure. So once you have your hobby or a side hustle, whatever you're working on that you want to transform into your full-time business, do some free work. Figure out what the kinks are in your business, how to overcome any problems, or whatever. You can test out your business for friends, family, for any free work. So if you're a photographer, do some free sessions. If you're a bartender, mobile bar, do some free like family parties and things like that. That way you can experience your business, running your business as if you had an actual paying client, but the difference is that they're not paying you for anything and you're not, you know, contracted, obligated to perform well. This is an opportunity for you to learn, and you just need to tell people like, hey, this is an opportunity for me to learn. This is free. I'm not obligated to provide you like XYZ services, but I would love the opportunity to offer you my business for free while I'm testing things out. Give people like free samples, so to speak. So out of that, you can build your portfolio, take a lot of pictures, take a lot of videos, make a lot of content for yourself to be able to market, to be able to do more free and sample kind of services for people. And that way, when you are ready to charge people too, you already have something to work off of, something to market yourself with. Yeah, that's what I think.
I have a funny story about that, and I totally agree. But for whatever reason, when I first started, my first event, it was quote unquote paid. I'm doing air quotes if you're listening in. But it was an old coworker, and I charged her $300. I tried to charge her $500. And she was like, I don't know, it's a little too expensive. And looking back, and I've talked about this before, looking back, I was like, I don't even leave my driveway for under a certain price now. But in the beginning,
right,
you have to do these things.
Right.
You have to do the free events. You have to do the free collaborations. You have to get your name out there. If you're not, you're never going to be able to market your business because people aren't going to know about you. But I felt like because there was a little bit of revenue associated with it, there was a little bit more of that stress level of I have to do a good job.
Right.
Now, she knew it was my first event. It was funny. Her dad, it was the first time we even drove the trailer, and her dad was standing in the driveway when we got there. And if anyone pulls a trailer or tows a boat or whatever it is, people watching you is like the most stressful thing ever. So it was literally our first time. And my husband was driving it, and we pull in, and all we had to do was like pull around. We didn't even have to back up or anything, but we were just so stressed out because he was watching us. But at the end of the day, he asked me, the father, he was like, I heard this was your first event. And you know, like how dads are.
Yeah.
Heard this was your first event. And I was like, yeah, it was. And he's like, wow, you wouldn't even have known. And I was like, oh, you just made my day.
That's sweet.
But he was a tough one. He was definitely a tough cookie to deal with. But I truly believe that you should do free events.
Or again, low charge.
Or very low charge. Yeah. Yeah. But I do feel like once you tie that revenue with your business, it's a whole different ballgame because you're now getting paid to do a service. And then talking about, revenue, pricing yourself. This is actually something I'm really excited to talk about because I feel like there's two conversations to this. One, you have to find the cost of doing business. What is your cost to, have the event for me, for a bartender? What is the cost for my supplies? What is the cost for my overhead? I think that's a lot of things that a lot of the small details that people don't think about is, yes, I have to buy juices and ice and cups and products for the actual event, but they don't see that I have to pay for my website. I have to pay for my insurance. I have to pay for the insurance on my trailer. I have to pay for the new tires if I have to get them. Like all those things that, people don't see that you have to understand that you need to charge for. So, the upcharge that you're doing on top of the cost of doing business is more than what you think it needs to be.
Yep.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, for me as a photographer, like I don't have a ton of expenses per event. All of my expenses are what you said about subscriptions, all of those different things and investments in my gear and goals that I have to upgrade my business in the future, get a new camera body, new lenses, things like that. So I don't really have a cost of doing business per event, per wedding, but there are a lot of expenses that I have in order to perform my job per event, per wedding. So all of my SD cards, the hard drive to back up my pictures afterwards, my $200 camera backpack to keep all my camera stuff safe, bringing multiple like duplicates of things in case one camera craps out, I have a backup option. All of these different things that you're right, like people don't really think about, that your clients don't really think about. And because they're not thinking about those things, they might think that you're overcharging. But finding the right people, and once you feel confident enough to set your pricing to where you feel like it needs to be able to pay yourself as well as pay employees or second shooters, and then also work towards all of the goals and cover your expenses, it's a lot to manage, which is where a lot of people have bookkeepers to help keep them on track. But if you're starting your business today and it's just you and you don't have a bookkeeper, you have to do the math on all of those things for yourself and figure out what website is the cheapest, what gallery delivery service is the cheapest. Like figure out all of your options with all the different subscriptions that you can have, and then do the math, create your cost of doing business out of that, and then figure out what you can charge other people, price yourself at, to cover all of those costs.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And then the other part I want to talk about is, the competition pricing. And there's two things to this. One, I I've believed, and I come from a sales background, and we used to always find out what our competition was charging. In the hospitality business, there's a hotel on every block. And luckily, we were one of the nicest in the area that I worked in. But we wanted to make sure that we were competitive with everyone else.
Right.
And it's funny, there was actually a thing in, I worked for Hyatt Hotels, and there was a thing that corporate used to do where they would do what they call shop calls. And they would literally shop each hotel in the area for the same exact event. So it was, let's say it was a wedding for 100 people. And they would call each hotel and they would say, I want pricing for a wedding for 100 people. And everybody would do it. We would do it. The other hotels would do it. So it was kind of like annoying because you're, excited to get this wedding for 100 people,
right.
but it's not real. But it's what the business is about. And we would get the pricing for the other hotels to make sure that our menu was similar to what we were pricing. And again, we were the most expensive in the area, one of the most. But we took pride in that because we had a level of service that went with our pricing.
And quality.
Yeah. Exactly. So for me, that's a huge thing is mobile bar is a very niche, it's very unique service and it's new. So people don't really understand it. And then when they see my pricing, they're like, oh my God, like it's funny when I first started, someone commented on one of my posts and it was like, aren't you just a folding table? Like, how can you charge this much money? I think I told you this. And, I wrote back and I was like, we're actually hiring if you want to come work with me. Cause it was when we were expanding, and you just have to take things like that with a grain of salt because
people don't get it.
No, they really don't.
They don't know what goes into your business. They don't know all of the costs, all of the bags of ice that you have to purchase per event. And all of the manpower to set things up. Like if he's just thinking, oh, it's just setting up a table and putting your drinks out on the table. Well, no, you're also driving a trailer and paying for new tires and paying for gas for your truck for an hour and a half, a wedding that's an hour and a half away. So
it's crazy.
Yeah.
But I do believe that you should know what your competition is charging, or at least have an idea of what their packages are.
Yeah. And what their packages are, what they're offering. You want to see what services they're offering for what price so that you can compare it to what services you're offering for what price. Like if I am looking at another photographer who charges the exact same pricing as me, but I offer more services for them or faster delivery time or different things like that, those things could be worth more than what they're doing. So not to say that like quality of work wouldn't be the same, but there are a bunch of different things in your business that will cost more, or the value of it is more than somebody else. So with your mobile bar, saying that there's 2 of your trailers and maybe somebody has like 4, and like your time is more precious than theirs because they would have 4 trailers. So you're able to price yourself maybe a little bit more than them because you can't cover. They're able to cover double the amount of events that you can do. So,
and I also think too, like, I'm just going to use numbers as an example, but if I'm charging $500 and someone else is charging $300, you want to know like kind of an average, I guess I should say, if I'm charging $1,000 and someone else is charging $300, you don't want to price yourself too out of the loop, but you also don't want to underprice yourself because you're valuable and you're right. If you are providing a level of service that maybe that $300 isn't providing, you want to show people your value. And there was something I read the other day. I don't know exactly what it said, but it said something along the lines of like, if your customer is like, I'm going to totally say it wrong. I don't know, something along the lines, like if your customer is paying less for you, they're going to pay less with someone else too. Like something along the lines of that, meaning like, if they're looking for a deal, they're looking for a deal. And that's not your customer.
Right.
And that's not your client. And that's not who you want to associate yourself with.
Right. And everybody shops around too. So it's important to shop around as a small business to see what other people are charging, because you want to pretend to be a client booking yourself. Yep. You want to look at your website with fresh eyes, look at your contact form with fresh eyes, see is it easy to find me and find my pricing and find all my information, because if those things aren't easy to find, they're probably not going to book you. And it's the same thing with other people's pricing. If people are saying, oh, I want a mobile bar for my wedding, they're probably going to look at a handful before they pick you. Yep. Unless, they're a friend or a friend of a friend, or your post just popped up out of the blue and they're like, wow, I've never seen this before, I have to book her. Mm-hmm. So you have to be able to either stand out and be the first one that they see, or stand out in the sea of other people in your industry.
And I think it's so true that people really do buy you. People,
Yeah.
you know, yes, you could have a similar product as someone else, but at the end of the day, they're really purchasing you, and they're purchasing you for their event. And especially being in an event-based service, you know, I could have this amazing personality and this like fun and outgoing, but that might not be what they want. They might want like a low-key bartender. I mean, I don't know who wants a low-key bartender, but maybe not the best scenario. But, you know, at the end of the day, people are really going to buy you for you. The price is going to come with, you know, everything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then let's talk about marketing yourself. And, you know, start your business like you're ready full time. I think that this is like a great topic because we're going to talk about this, but I guess I could start with my story. So I went back to hospitality in October of 2020, and I left in April of 2021, and I had my first event in May. I had nothing else booked after that. So I just had this gut feeling in my soul and in my heart that if I really wanted this business to be what it is or what it's going to be, I needed to do this full time.
Yeah.
So I gave my 2 weeks notice after 13 years, which was literally the hardest thing of my entire life. Like going into my boss's office with like my resignation letter was literally like gut wrenching. But I just knew in my heart that this was my calling and this is what I needed to do. But I also needed to know, okay, this is what I have to make each month to pay my bills. And we talked about this. Like I have a family, I have a mortgage, we have bills to pay. Thankfully I have a husband who is also, you know, an amazing supporter and also brings money in. So worst case scenario, we weren't going to be out on the street. But you know, it was going to be a struggle and I knew it was going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
But I knew that if I wanted this to be something, I needed to put my all into it. So I think that when you're thinking of starting a business, if you can put your all into it, you know, I talk to a lot of other mobile bars who are still doing other things and they're wondering why their mobile bar is not successful. And it's because they're not putting their all into it. And, you know, I'm a firm believer that I could have always gone back to hospitality. There's so many hotels, you know, maybe I wouldn't have gone back to the one that I was at, but there's so many hotels out there. And I just felt like if this didn't work out, if this did not, you know, if this wasn't my future, I could go back to hospitality. And I think that's how you have to look at it. You have to look at it as if you don't try, what's going to happen? You know, you're going to regret it. And if you have that gut feeling and you have that vision on your heart, you need to go for it.
Yeah. And if it doesn't work out, not to say that it's the end of the world and not to say that you can't go back to it later too. If you're not getting as successful as you thought that you would, and you still need money, like you could still pick up an easy part-time job doing, I don't know, like serving or something, and you can still work on your business. Going back and getting another job does not mean that you're failing. It means that you just want more money to support your business in order to get it off the ground.
Or maybe it wasn't the right time either. You know, maybe you thought, okay, I'm going to do this. This is where I'm going. And maybe it just wasn't the right time in your life.
Right. It doesn't mean you have to put it to rest.
Right. Exactly. And you can pick it back up, you know, but you learned from it. I feel like everything that you fail on or doesn't happen the way that you want is a learning curve.
Yep.
And you just have to know that, you know, whatever you believe in, I'm Christian, and I feel like God really puts you in a place for a reason. And I truly feel that if it's meant to be, you'll figure out a way to make it happen. And the universe will help you at the end of the day.
Yeah. You just have to try a little bit harder.
Yeah. Yeah.
To make it happen.
But going back to that first event that I did, I had no events after, as I mentioned, but I had pictures from my first event. You know, we took videos and the trailer was actually set up for an event. And I started promoting myself, and I actually went back and looked. I use Wix as my website designer, and it has analytics on how many people go to your website, you know, where it's from and all of that. The first month that I started promoting, which was May, I had the most traction that I've still to this day that I've ever had on my business. Yeah. Because I was out there promoting myself. I was putting it into Facebook groups. I was blasting those pictures everywhere and anywhere. I'm a new mobile bar. We're starting out with events, and the level of excitement that I had, I feel like people could see.
Yeah.
And that is the one thing that when you're, you know, I'm the pot calling the kettle black, I guess, because I don't do that anymore. And I need to, you know, I am not getting busy. Yeah, I'm very lucky that I'm very busy, but I could be busier in my mind. I don't know if I could, but I probably could. But I feel like when you first start, you have that like drive and that eager. Right. And I do agree, like you lose it a little bit.
I do, because I think because when you first get started and you're promoting it and talking about it so much, it's new. And when you're marketing, you're able to say, hey, I'm new, and people are excited for you. But to then say like, oh, I'm 2 years into my business, like people are maybe a little bit less excited because, and maybe you're a little bit less excited too, because you've been around the block once or twice. And I don't know, I'm still excited and I still love my business and love what I do, but I agree, like every now and then I have a moment where it feels like work, like it's work. And there's other times where it's like, wow, I love what I do. This is amazing. I can't believe like blah, blah, blah. Yep. So the excitement is definitely still there, but it's just different because you're used to it. You experience it every day. Doing your business full time, you have your hands on it every single day. And so it's a little bit less exciting, and maybe I don't talk it up as much as I could. Like if I'm at a family picnic or something, they're like, hey, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm a wedding photographer, and kind of leave it at that. But when I first got started, I'd be like, oh, I'm a wedding photographer, and I was nervous and I was shy, but I would be like, oh, and this is my dream and this is what I want to do, and I would like talk it up a little bit more because you're excited about it and it's new.
Yep. I feel like we need to get back to that. And because this weekend felt like work. This weekend really felt like
that's
work.
What I mean.
Ooh, like, my goodness. But I also feel like it was rewarding too. And I was able to achieve everything that I achieved this past weekend. And it really questioned if this business was the right thing for me. But I think that that's good for me to share. You know, like my business looks amazing and it is amazing, but it's really freaking hard too. Yeah. And I think that that's what you have to know when you start this side hustle and going to full time is it's not going to be a walk in the park every day. And you're going to look back 3 years later and be like, wow. But going back to the excitement in the beginning, and maybe you're not as excited right now, 3 seasons in, I actually still post sometimes in Facebook groups and I'm like, new mobile bar, and people don't know, like they could go to my website and then see, but like, okay, at that point I already captured you to go to my website.
Yeah. So and everything's relative, you know, like 2-year-old mobile bar still is new.
Yes.
You're still
and, like,
new.
For me, like, I got a second trailer. So, like, you could get a new
camera. That trailer's new.
It is new. Exactly. That one is new. You could get a new camera and, like, you could change your editing up a little bit. Like, I feel like there's pivots that you could take even if you feel like you're... Anyway, I feel like we're getting a little off course because we're still talking about being new. But going back to like posting and marketing yourself, it's okay to reuse content too.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that when I first started, I just had a few pictures and I blasted them everywhere. But I feel like because we see them every single day, we see the same pictures, we see the same videos, but you don't see that. Like you as in Megan, you don't see the same thing that I post every single day. Like you're not stalking my page. I'm not stalking your page. Like we're not going to see each other's content every single day. So for me, I could post the same video 10 times on my feed and you'll probably maybe see it once.
And you can repurpose it. So like you can use like the first 3 seconds of that video, or you can use the last 3 seconds of that video, or you can put the whole thing up with different music and a different message and a different caption to it. So completely agree. You can repurpose all of your old stuff over and over again by just giving it a different twist and a different message and spacing it out enough. You know, post it 1 week, let 2 weeks pass, post some other stuff, post it again. You're right. I'm not going to see everything you post, and you're not going to see everything that I post.
What's that thing? It's like, nobody's going to know.
Nobody's going to know. They're going to know.
Nobody's going to know. But truthfully, like really nobody is going to know. So,
and on the different platforms too, you can post it one day on Instagram, another day on TikTok, another day on Facebook.
And it's all different potential clients seeing it.
Yeah.
So reuse that content is what we're getting at.
Yeah, that was huge. That was huge for me. When I first had gotten started, I was second shooting for some people, but in order to get started in that, you have to have experience. And how do you get experience second shooting for weddings if nobody will let you second shoot for them? So you have to be able to create a portfolio for yourself for people to see, oh, hey, she's a new photographer. Her work seems pretty good. I should have her come and be a second shooter for me because I could charge her, or I could pay her cheaper than an experienced second shooter and whatever. So I would set up stuff in my house. I got a fake ring from Target that was like $10.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah, and I created something on Canva or on like Google Docs or something, I forget, and printed out like a fake invitation and picked some flowers, like wildflowers that were on like the side of the road, made a little like detail picture, and I had like a pair of heels in my closet. Like I put together like a fake wedding flat lay of people's rings. I have a
question. Do you still have all those things?
Yeah, I wore those shoes a few months ago.
You should go back and do like the same picture, and now with your new like editing style, because I know you've changed your style.
That's true. I could.
And like look at the difference between like how much you've grown in 3 years.
Oh, that would be cute. Do it. Flashback, you
know.
Be like day 1 versus day 600 and whatever.
Oh my God, you should do it.
That would be funny. But moral of the story is that you don't have to have paying clients and experience and whatever in order to build up your portfolio. It's a lot easier if you already at an event, have everything set up and whatever, but you can take photos for content in your bedroom, at your house, outside in your backyard. Like you can create your portfolio from scratch, DIY yourself. You don't have to spend money on a content day or for a photo shoot with a photographer. You can create your own stuff from the beginning until you're at the point where you can invest in your business in that way. And so I was able to second shoot for people because I was taking mock wedding photos myself at home before I got a ticket to a content day, where that really like kicked everything off for me, and I was able to really build my portfolio with pictures of people and everything. But I did a lot at home first of just pictures of rings or pictures of flowers outside or self-portraits of myself, just to get used to the editing style and get used to creating, you know, I guess my products, creating my images at home before I had paying clients or free work.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I took pictures of cocktails just at my house, you know, like out on my like patio and things like that. And yeah, that was how I started. Like I look back at like beginning of my Instagram, and first I'm like, oh, why did I post that? But that was how I felt at the time. And it clearly started my business. So I think you just have to not be scared, and you have to just really feel confident in whatever your hobby or side hustle is, because that's the only way that you're going to get to go full time.
Yep. So when you're posting all of this stuff on your Instagram and whatever, and you're repurposing all of this content with different important messages, all of these captions, try to make them as deep and important and helpful for potential clients as they could be. So for you could say something like, or when you were getting started, say something like, as your bartender, I do XYZ, or I bring XYZ, or like, you don't have to worry about, have to worry about blah, blah, blah. I bring that with me, even though you've maybe never had a paying event. So that was the same for me. So I would put captions over like the fake pictures of rings that I would create, and would say something like, as your photographer, I do XYZ, or like, I don't know, just kind of come up with like an important, informative message about your business that you could put in there that would be helpful for potential brides or people that would maybe be booking with you. And yeah, just saying I do instead of I will or I would makes it sound more confident and like you've already started your business, even if it hasn't started yet.
And I think just painting that picture for a potential client, I totally agree with that. I still do that today. And I think that that's so important, because you have to give that person the want. And I always get in my business that people want what I have. And if they don't want it, I'm not going to sell it.
Right.
So, you know, people want wedding photographer, you know.
We're a luxury business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I continue to show them why they need me, that's where my business is going to continue to come. But if they don't know why they need me, they're not going to book me. So I totally agree with that. And it's using those future statements when you're first starting to really also remind yourself that you can do this. And like, I got this. I'm going to book that big event, and I'm going to, and I also had, and this is a little side tangent, but I had I hired a business coach when I first started. And one of the things is have a dream list of things that you want to do in your business. And one of them was on the top of my list. I still have not done it yet 3 years later, but that's okay. It was to work at this one venue. It's Candlewood Candlewood Inn.
In Brookfield. I love them.
The owners are like the sweetest humans in the entire world. Forget her name, but she's amazing.
That would be an awesome venue for you.
Yes, it's perfect. Like I turned down 2 pieces of business already. So it was my fault that I didn't get my dream because one, I was on vacation.
Yeah.
And I forget why the other one was. But I have a lead right now for that. And I'm
oh
like,
my gosh.
I literally called the bride. I was like, this is my dream venue. Like, can you just book me for this? I didn't say it like that, but
I love it there.
But
so
have a dream list. Have the top 10 things that you want to achieve in your business and go back to it and go back to, in the future, but have these goals because it's going to make them crazy big and make some very achievable so that you can do the first few, in your first few months of your business, your first year, and then have the bigger ones where it seems unachievable, but at the end of the day, you know that you can achieve it.
Yep.
It's just like goal setting. Like you have to have goals in business, in life, in anything, to keep yourself going on those hard days where it's really, really, really hard.
Definitely.
Like this weekend. So let's talk about skills and kind of like what you need to really dive into, doing a side hustle full time.
Yep.
I think the first thing is leadership.
Definitely.
Do you want to start with that one?
Sure. I mean, we'll get into education and past work experience too, and what we think is valuable, but all of those things in your past prior work, you working at the Hyatt hospitality, those are skills that taught you leadership in order to run your business. So at the beginning, you're just yourself. You're a one-man band. You're just leading yourself. But that can be a really hard thing to do. You have to have willpower in order to set deadlines for yourself and meet them. It can be really hard to get stuck on marketing yourself on Instagram and not make it to the rest of your to-do list. So you need to be able to have leadership qualities in order to prioritize things and get things done and figure out what's needed in order to be successful. And all of that is leadership. And at the beginning, it's just managing yourself instead of managing a team.
Mm-hmm. And my husband made a comment one time when we were in like a crazy season of, I think it was last year, and it was like, I think I had like 4 events that weekend and it was just nuts. And he's like, man, we should have done this when we were younger. We should have done this before we had kids. And I thought about it and I was like, yeah, you're right. And then I've thought about it again and I'm like, no, because I wasn't ready then.
Right.
And that wasn't the season for me.
It wouldn't have worked then.
It would not have worked then. I wouldn't have been successful then. And I wouldn't have been able to do it. When I first started my business, I literally like woke up, worked my business. My kids woke up, my kids went to bed. I worked on the business again. Like I wouldn't have done that. And I wouldn't have had like the manpower and the willpower to do that if I wasn't at the right season in my life. Right. And I feel like, going back to like leadership and you have to be at a right stage in your life to be able to be a leader. I was always a leader. I feel like even in my corporate background, because I don't know, I guess I was very bossy and not that bossy goes hand in hand with leadership. I think it's 2 different things. But I feel like you need to raise your hand and you need to be able to raise your hand. And, if you're in a room of people and you're not raising your hand, how are you going to lead that room one day?
Right.
So I feel like you need to, see these things in your current life. And that's going to show you if you can do this and if you can be successful at this. Or you just wing it, kind of like we do every day. But I feel like you really need to, in entrepreneurship, you are by yourself and you create the relationships, you create the, your team and things like that. But at the end of the day, like you have to lead yourself and you have to manage your time and you have to manage your business. And I feel like, you have to give yourself deadlines. Mm-hmm. And if you can't do that in your lifestyle, you're probably not going to be able to do it in your business. But like you said in the beginning, you can teach yourself these things.
Oh, yeah.
Or you can hire a coach. You can hire someone to help you who's in the field of expertise that you want to be in.
Yep.
I mean, social media and Zoom calls and, technology today, you don't have to know the person personally. You can literally hashtag mobile bar coach and find a mobile bar coach, or you can hire me, one or the other. But where you can, find an amazing photographer who's been doing this for a while and literally send them a DM and be like, hey, do you offer coaching consulting services? I love your product. I love your business. I love what you're doing. And they're probably going to feel pretty flattered.
Yeah.
That someone is reaching out to them.
We were going to get into this a little bit later, but we can bring it up right now, is that shadowing other people is major for your small business. I mean, you have bartending experience. You would not have opened up a mobile bar if you had not been a bartender in a past life.
No.
And same with me and my photography. Like, if I hadn't taken a bunch of photography classes in high school, even though it was just a high school level, if I hadn't learned photography settings back then, I would not have even had the interest to do what I'm doing right now. Not to say that you can't find everything on YouTube, because I definitely needed the refresher and did go search for it on the internet once I started my business. But like, if I hadn't taken those basic art classes when I was 15, 16, I wouldn't have even wanted to be doing this. So doing what you need to do, having things fall into your lap and be like, oh, I really like this. Like, if you hadn't applied to be a bartender when you were in college, or however old you were when you got started in it, you wouldn't have been like, oh, I really like this. This is really fun. And you probably wouldn't have turned it into a business today. So having that work experience at other places, whether it's a big company and you're doing, all of the different little jobs, and you grow and try out everything, because you have to kind of try out everything. Like, you have the hospitality experience, you have the bartending experience, you have like formal education. Like, all of those things go hand in hand, and to be able to be your own boss. And for me, I don't have a lot of those things, but was able to figure it out. And
I think it's funny. So yes, having the bartending experience definitely was helpful, but it's funny, there's a lot of mobile bars who have never bartended, and I personally find it mind-boggling. But also, one of my main bartenders was never a bartender. And I'm a firm believer that anyone can make a vodka soda. Like, I can teach anyone a Pinterest recipe, but you can't teach people the life skills of being kind and being personable. Customer service. And I think that is what hospitality taught me, and also the sales background of it. I don't think I would be as successful in this business if I did not have the sales background. And it's funny, because I was actually talking to a customer at an event the other day, and I was telling them how busy I am and, how many events we have coming up and things like that. And they were like, oh, like, it must be really hard for you to say no to things, or like turn down a piece of business. I forget how we got into it, but I was like, it is. I was like, however, I actually learned in my hospitality background that it's okay to say no to a piece of business. Oh, this is how it got started. My event was an hour and a half away, and I was like, I can't do these anymore. Like, they're too far. But how do you say no to a 175 person wedding? And
because you could have gotten 175 for the same day locally.
Exactly. So, and this, but at the time, it's called, like, what is it called? Like, bird in hand or something, where it's like,
I don't know.
You have that piece of business in your hand, and yes, another piece could come along, but it's like, you want to book it right then and there, because you're like, it's sold. They want to book me. Like, I'm golden. And you don't know if another piece is going to come in. However, when I was in hospitality, we had a minimum on our ballroom. So the ballroom, I was in Greenwich, Connecticut. The ballroom was, I think it was like, I'm like losing my train of thought, because I kind of blocked out that stage of my life. But I think it was $60,000 for a Saturday night.
Oh, wow.
You had to spend that amount on a Saturday to get the ballroom. And we would get, because we had a quota, we had a sales quota. We had to achieve a certain amount of revenue each month. So I would get a wedding, and it would be like $40,000 for that Saturday. And I would go to my boss with like my tail between my legs. And I'm like, listen, I know the minimum is on a Saturday, but they're going to do this, and they said they're going to expand and this and that. And he'd be like, no, like, and I'm like, you're turning down $40,000. And he's like, yeah, because we're going to get another piece of business. And this would be like a year and a half out. And he's like, we're going to get another piece of business. And you know what? For the most part, he was right. He wasn't right every single time, but for the most part, he was right. It's totally a gamble. However, you have to show the value for that piece of business. And, a lot of people hear the word wedding, and I think you upcharge, and a lot of people, charge more, because a wedding, there's a lot more that goes into it. There's a lot more labor. There's a lot more, services on my end and products on my end. But I don't charge different for certain events. But with a wedding, I have a minimum on a Saturday, because I know that I probably will get a wedding. So if it's a smaller birthday party that wants to come on a Saturday, during prime season, I've learned that I need to say no to those events, because there's only one Saturday that week, or there's only 4 per month. So it's really hard, but that's the education piece that comes from my background.
But also I feel like that's turning it down is kind of being neighborly, because you're at the stage in your business where you can turn away business and be like, no, a bigger opportunity, and it'll be financially make more sense for me to turn you down to get a bigger wedding, because finances are a huge part of it. But saying no to somebody doesn't mean you have to be like, no, talk to you later. You can be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm already booked, or like, you don't have to say you can't afford to lose like a prime date. But that's an opportunity for you to give somebody else an opportunity. So if you are friends with mobile bars that are just getting started, I mean, you're consulting. If you have a list of people in the area or close that would kill for that opportunity. So that's just being neighborly to be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm already booked, even though you're not. And be like, but I have a list of friends that are just getting started and can meet your budget, absolutely. And would love to be there. Like, that's giving an opportunity to somebody else.
And I think that goes back to like when you're first starting, befriend your competition. Like, I am such a firm believer in that. I was a little nervous at first because some of my competition was already in the business for a little while. And I know, especially with photography or other businesses that have been around a little bit longer than mobile bars. Excuse me. So for me, it was hard, like reaching out to someone who's been doing this for 3 years. But luckily, mobile bars have not been around forever, so there weren't too many. But we've built relationships with each other. I've gotten so many leads and bookings from them because they're already booked. And if I did not reach out to them, I would have never gotten that. And same vice versa. So I think that that's also the education and experience, because you're now talking to someone who's doing the same thing you're doing. It's almost like a colleague, but they're just in different businesses. But I'm a very, very strong believer in your competition is your friend. And you need to befriend them, because at the end of the day, there's no reason that you should not be friendly with them.
And that's a huge skill set that you need as an entrepreneur, is being friendly, being kind with people. We talked about customer service with your clients and potential clients and when you're marketing yourself, but you have to be just as amazing with customer service with colleagues. Like you said, being able to recommend other people or to reach out and be like, hey, looking for advice, like being able to be kind with people and let go of the fact that they're competition and treat them like a friend. That's a huge skill to have as an entrepreneur. Let go of the
ego.
Your ego. Let go of it. You have to, like, even though you know that you're confident, because that's another thing, is confidence is key. You have to be confident in what you're providing and what your business is all about. But you have to let the ego go, and you might feel like the shit, but you can't think that you're better than anybody else, because you're not.
No, you're not. And that's hard, because you are, especially when you're like new and you're getting bookings and you're like on cloud 9 and you just booked like your biggest event, and then you booked another big event, but then you're going to have weeks where you book nothing. And nobody's calling, you're getting ghosted, you're not doing anything valuable in your business. You're literally just surviving. And those are the days where you need to lean on other people.
Absolutely.
And, if you have someone who's in your backyard and they're going through the same thing you're going through, it's going to help you so much, because they get it. Like, I can tell my husband every day, like, how stressed I am, but he doesn't understand because he's not in the thick of it like I am. So I think it's really important to have that. And then...
problem solving. I mean, maybe I'll just like say the whole list that we came up with out loud, but leadership. Leadership is huge. Being able to manage yourself, be a go-getter, don't quit. Even if things aren't going your way, like, keep at it, keep picking at it. And if it doesn't work on day 1, don't be surprised. It'll work on day 30, or it might work on day 60. Like, it might take a little bit of time, but you have to be a go-getter and put out new ideas and really find your clients. Don't wait for them to find you. Customer service is huge. Confidence is huge. Do the I do statements instead of I will or I would statements. Pretend like you're already, you're already huge. And problem solving, like we talked about at the very beginning of the episode, is things will not go to plan, and you need to be able to pivot and switch on your feet and figure out what plan B is. And we have a whole episode about plan B. And how to pivot and come up with backup plans for your business. I think we did an entire episode on that, didn't we?
I think we did. And I think you almost need to like, and this sounds weird, but you almost need to go in expecting something to happen.
Yeah.
Because then
right.
when it doesn't, you're going to feel really good about yourself. But when it does, you're going to already have a plan for it.
Yeah.
You're already going to say, okay, like my biggest thing is running out of ice. And I'm like, you know what? My other bartender always tells me, because she's like she puts me back onto, the real world. And she's like, Jen, I can go get more ice. She's like, really? That's your biggest concern? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, I can go buy more ice. Like, it's really not that big of a deal. But you just almost have to like go in with literally thinking that something's going to go wrong. And I know that sounds really weird, but I just feel like then you're setting yourself up to have a plan B and like have, that backup.
Yep. All the shoots that I do, even casual engagement sessions, not weddings, but like any time that I'm shooting for anybody, even if it's just like friends or family and I'm not charging them anything, like I always bring backup equipment. Yep. I don't go anywhere.
We did have a whole episode on this.
Yeah, I don't go anywhere with one camera body. I always bring two, and same with my lenses. Like, what if one falls off? I gotta have a plan B if that's the case, and that's important. The third thing we wanted to talk about is education and experience. So we talked about it a little bit as we went along in the episode, but I feel like education trumps education. So working in the field, shadowing other small businesses, or being a bartender for a big restaurant or something, and then opening up your own small business as a bartender, I feel like that is more important and valuable because you learn the problem solving skills on the floor and all of these different things rather than hearing that you need to do that. Like today, like you can't just watch this episode and be like, yep, I'm going to do it. You got to watch this episode and be like, ooh, yeah, they've got a point. Let me go and make a to-do list of, action steps to get me there. So I feel like education where you learn all of those things in like a textbook and you're just told what you need to know rather than actually learning those things like for yourself, I feel like the experience is more valuable.
I agree and disagree.
But I didn't go to college, so I'm a little bit biased.
So no, totally. But that's okay. Everyone has a different career or a different path in life. And I did go to college and I went to school for communications. And I truly do feel that, and I hated school. Oh my God. I literally passed by the skin of my teeth. I cheated a lot. Don't tell anyone. But I also learned a lot of valuable lessons in college, and I got to experience life outside of the home. I moved out of my parents' house for the first time, and I got to live with my friends and, break all the rules and do different things and have, a schedule where I had to get up and go to class. And if my friends didn't sign me in, but I'm not the best because I was not the best student. But I truly feel that college does have a lot of value to give to you. And I do not regret going by any means. But I truly feel like I've learned so many valuable lessons from college that put me where I am today. But that's not everyone's path. It's right. And I also probably don't think I would have landed my job with hospitality if I didn't go to college.
That's so true.
Then I wouldn't have gotten all the experience from the hospitality world to be able to make the mobile bar world successful. Yep. So I just feel like there is a ripple effect to every stage that you go through in life, but do what your heart tells you to do, not, what your parents tell you to do and anything like that. But you really have to go with that gut feeling. And if you feel called to be an entrepreneur and you feel called to start your own business and take your side hustle and make it full time, like that is pulling on your heart for a reason. Yeah. And you really have to like trust your gut and your instinct. And the worst case is it doesn't work out, and that's okay. Yep. You figure something else out along the way.
Yep. And that's a learning experience to maybe open up a different small business in the future. You know, if like the only motivation for you is money in your small business, it's probably not gonna succeed. You have to do something that you feel like will make a difference in somebody else's life. Or something that makes you truly happy.
And you have to have a why. We always talk about this. And if your why is not strong and powerful and like everything to you, the hard days are going to make you quit instantly. Right. Because if you don't have a why are you going to keep going in your business? Why are you going to go through the hard times? So you have to really, even before you say like, I want to start a hobby, why do you want to start that hobby?
Right.
What is that hobby doing for
Right.
you? Same with the side hustle. What is that side hustle doing for you? Because if you are not strong enough and powerful enough and you don't love it to your literal core, you're not going to be successful with it.
One final thought that I feel like we're finished, but just like one more thing that I wanted to talk about, kind of back to education and college and all of that, is that I used to look at the world very structured.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
oh, I love this.
Like in the town that I grew up in and the high school that I went to, everything was super college oriented, and everybody had, there was a guidance counselor. There were like 10 guidance counselors, and it would go like alphabetical and whatever, but like everybody had somebody, and everything was just so college focused. Every student took like at least one AP or more. I had some friends where it was like their entire schedule in their senior year was like 5 classes of APs and like health, and like that would be it, which was just insane to me because I didn't even know if I wanted to go at all. But just I thought that the world was so structured with, you have to do this and you have to do this in order to make it to this end point, and that everybody gets married and everybody has kids, and I just thought the world was just like so structured until I applied to college, but I just didn't go. I was waiting for a yes from one college that I was waitlisted at. I got yeses from like 2 others, I think, but the deadline to make the jump with the ones I got into would have been, I think it was before I heard from the school I was waitlisted at. So I was like, I could either take the yes at these 2 schools that I don't want to go to, or wait to hear either a yes or a no from this waitlisted school that I also don't really want to go to. And so I said no to those other ones. And then once I heard back from the school I was waitlisted at, they also said no. And I was like, well, I turned down all of my options. What do I do now? So I got a full-time job, and I got a full-time job after a little while. I was working part-time at somewhere in town, like family friends. But I ended up getting a full-time job, and just figuring out what you want to do does not have to mean that you have to do that in college. It's just the step that most people take, but the world is not as structured as you think that it is. And where am I going with this? There was one last thing that I was like, oh, this will tie it all off, was that...
Well, I'm going to side really quick because one of my friends was an entrepreneur very early in life, and I always kind of like judged her. And I was like,
really?
Yeah. I was like, because I did the corporate ladder.
Yeah.
I went to college. I got the 9 to 5 and I grew the corporate ladder. And so I was like looking at her, I'm like, how do you even make money? Like, what are you doing? And she was very successful and she was doing an amazing job. But you don't see that in entrepreneurship all the time. Like, you don't see the behind the scenes of how you're making your money. You just like think they're doing something. But I totally agree with that. I came from the same background, like a very structured life. My parents didn't go to college either. So I was like the first one to go to college.
And you thought that made you higher, but it really doesn't to me.
I do agree. I agree and disagree. Just because I took the path. So I think for me, I have a little bit more of but I love that we can be different about this.
Right.
Like, I love that you share your side, I share my side, but it both brought us to the same end.
Right.
I just found it out a little bit later in life.
And success to you might be a different definition than success to me or success to whoever's watching. Success doesn't always have to be money. No. Success for me is happiness.
100%. Like, success to me right now is I'm home with my kids.
Yeah.
If I was working my 9 to 5, I would never see them. Literally, I would never see them.
Yeah. I would rather be happy with a job that I love, making, minimum wage, than have a job that I don't love, making $100,000. Like, I would 10 times over choose a job that I'm happy with than a job that I hate. Yeah. What I wanted to came back to me was maturity. Like, I think college is a time where a lot of people become mature, but that's not for everybody. Like, I went through a lot as a kid with like losing family members and growing up with a lot of like older family around and taking care of them. And I feel like that gave me a level of maturity that people don't really experience until they're a lot older. I feel like going through like major life problems, snaps you into reality and be like, okay, well, this is the meaning of life.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't lose family until they're a lot older.
I have all 4 of my grandparents.
I don't have any.
It's crazy.
So that's exactly what I mean. I didn't have a childhood dog, but like a lot of my friends like went through grief and death with like childhood pets and whatever. But we're getting off on a huge tangent.
We are. But I feel like
maturity is what I'm trying to say, is that I feel like I was a lot more mature than most people my age, and so college didn't matter to me. Like I was over it by the time people were shipping themselves off. Like I was checked out and done and ready for a full-time job.
But that was your path
when they were graduating.
I'm a firm believer that everyone has a path. It's just like when you find it, how you get there.
Yeah.
But that was your path, and but whatever path you take, at the end of the day, I'm such a firm believer that if you work hard, you can do anything that you set your mind to. And it may be harder for others. It may take longer than others, but I just saw something I forget who it was, but someone started a business at 74. Like there's no early time. There's no end time. Like you can literally do it whenever you want to do it. And don't feel like you're too old to do anything, or you've passed that stage in your life already, or I'm too young to do this. I can't do this yet. Like, don't tell yourself those negative thoughts because those are the ones that are going to hold you back.
Yeah. And what you said with you and your husband saying, oh, it would have been easier to do this without kids, but you weren't ready yet. No. And so it could be the same for the 70-year-old starting their business right now, is maybe they just had that life-changing experience where they were like, I need to start this business. Yeah. They maybe didn't have that at age 50. Like, you need to let yourself experience what you need to experience in order to start your small business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this.
This huge tangent. Sorry, guys.
Well, I hope this was valuable. Thank you if you're still tuned in.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have next topic yet, but we are launching every 2 weeks, and we'll continue to do that until we maybe get out of busy season. Then maybe we'll come down to every week.
Hopefully.
But yeah. We're thriving and surviving through this season. So thanks for tuning in. Be sure to leave some comments, subscribe to our YouTube channel, do all the above. But we love doing this. We hope it's bringing valuable content to you guys. But let us know what you want to hear about.
Yep.
All right.
All
Thanks.
Right. Cheers.